Hello all and welcome back to another episode in this series of the CT70 Silvertag restoration. Last time you saw that we completed the wheels, we got the engine on its stand and the frame mounted to it, and today we're going to continue with the build. So the plan is to get the tank in, get some forks on, get some fenders on and really start to bring this chassis together. So I'm going to dive straight into that and hopefully you all enjoy it. As you know, we're running an 88cc top end kit, new cylinder head, the works, and part of that is you run a bigger carb. And normally to run a bigger carb you run this rotation plate, which is very handy, but I'm quite keen to keep a straight inline carb so it gives it that quite stock OEM look. One of the issues we're facing is obviously we run a filter. This is a pretty small cone filter that will sit in the back of the carb, but we have a nice clash between this and our fuel tap. So what we're going to have to do is either have two options. We can either rotate this carb left or right to give space for this to sit here and not clash the filter, or the second option, after speaking to a good friend, is to build a spacer to stand off your fuel tap just a little bit. So what I'm thinking is we'll make a really nice spacer on the lathe. We'll go over, turn up some aluminium bar, double thread on each end and stand this fuel tap off so we can keep our filter in exactly the same spot. So one of these things, when you're building something slightly custom, you do get these issues. So we're going to tackle that, and then it's going to allow us to get the tank in and this fuel line cut. So we hop over to the lathe and we've got a bit of aluminium bar that we're going to use to turn up this spacer. Now, the Myford's a great little lathe, hobby enthusiast level, but it's enough grunt and enough stiffness or rigidity in the machine to turn up most stuff you need at home. So I'm going to start by facing this part off and just cleaning up the material. Obviously I want to bring this OD down, so using a nice carbide insert and some WD-40 to get a lovely clean finish, and we're just going to work our way down with some calipers until we get where we want to be. When we reach our final dimension, next up is to go in with a centre drill, mark a small centre on the end, and then come in with our standard high-speed steel drill and just take the middle out of this part. We're also then going to use our tap and die, our tap set, to drop a thread down the middle of this. Obviously this is corresponding to the bolt size that I will be using. Once that thread is cut, it's the final jobs. I'm putting some chamfers to break those edges, and we're going to part it off so we have a finished piece that can now go straight over to the bike and test it out. Here you can see a close-up of the shoulder relief. So guys, it is roasting in this shed. It's 32 degrees outside and it is pretty much baking in here, but it's not stopping us. So as you've seen, we've been on the Myford lathe and we have turned up a spacer. The original idea has changed slightly, but essentially we are using a spacer to stand off our fuel tap. So we have a fuel tap, our bolt, our spacer with a relief in the back, which I'll show a close up now, and that relief allows it to mount to the back side of this riv nut here. We're going to thread through the frame here where the old air filter fitted, and I'm going to put a lock nut on the back just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. So small little modification, looks nice, aluminium brushed, a few light marks in it which I'll buff off, but apart from that it looks really good. So let's get that on and move back to the fuel tank. I have just remembered, very luckily, that with the electronic ignition kit you now have a CDI, so I need to locate this somewhere. So I thought that we can tuck it on the opposite side of the coil. We've got a nice flat bit of frame. We're going to double side sticky tape it on for now. I did think about bolting it, but I don't want to drill any holes and there doesn't seem to be a really obvious point at the moment. I did think about using these holes or fixings here, but actually that means that if the chain guard ever comes off, I'm going to lose the fixing for my CDI. So double-sided tape, time will tell. If it lasts. Progress is certainly slow today. It's just one of those things. Sometimes it doesn't always go to plan. But where we were last, I was attempting to double-sided sticky tape that to the inside and then just sat there and thought, do you know what, let's do it properly. Double-sided sticky tape is not a solution to have on a bike long term. The last thing, imagine I'm riding down the road and that decides to come off. So I don't want to risk that at all, so I've gone away and knocked up a nice bracket that I'm going to mount to the engine using one of the case fixings, and then lock nut my CDI to that. So I'll show a closer that up as I fit it, but it's taken me an hour or two to think of this, to get the mounting, the position, all of that stuff, but I think it'll be worth it in the long run, because I just want it to be reliable, and once this frame's together, the fuel pipes are on, all of that, I don't want to be taking it off. So let's do it properly, let's do it now, let's get it done. With the decision made to go ahead with that bracket, we go about fixing it, and I've decided to use one of the cases on the side of the engine, as it's a nice solid fixing point and it's about the only thing you can fix to in this area. But here you can see it's a little bracket that I've made up, very simple, and it allows me to lock nut and thread lock this CDI to the back of it. It is a very awkward position, so once it's on and the bike's built up, there's no way you get into it. From there though, we're back to where we started. The fuel tank can go in and we can get these lines cut and to length and work out where they're going to go. Obviously we're slightly different from standard now, especially with this fuel tap, so we should need to take our time and make sure the fuel lines are right. We continue fitting the tank side of the fuel lines. We've cut them to length and we've got some nice clips that will just make sure these fuel lines don't go anywhere. I don't think they will, but they were fitted on the OEM bike, so I've got a set, so let's use them. And from there we can run the second line and get that all in place. Moving back towards the rear of the frame, we've obviously got the battery holder. This part was incredibly difficult to get. I think it came from the Netherlands in the end, and then we're fitting a rectifier to that, which is part of the electrical system for this bike. From there, we're just walking around, adding parts in. We've got the hinge, which is the original one, or the seat hinge clip latch. That has been re-zinc plated, and we've also got a nice battery sliding bracket that sits inside that metal bracket we saw earlier. And here's an overview of what it's looking like from this top view. You can see we've got the bracket, the fuel tank, all these nice shiny parts, and it is looking really good, especially considering when I got this bike there was nothing in this rear end and it was absolutely in pieces. And I know that we are deviating away from the original bike, but I think this setup is very nice. We want the extra performance, and this is a clean way to do it. That does look very factory. So overall, I'm very happy with this setup. And as you can see, we have got load more parts to get on this bike. We've got these lovely fenders, the original fenders, and I was super keen to keep these original. I could have bought new, but I decided to take them away, get them chrome plated. We rust proof the inside of them, and they're going back on the bike, which I think is a nice touch, because it's so easy to get carried away and throw money at these things and just buy new, but it is cool to keep the original parts on the bike. And it wouldn't be a Silvertag without the Silvertag, so we've got a very good remake of that Silvertag. They are pretty much exactly the same as original and look great. From there, I decided to start on the front end of the bike. We have got the forks that have been painted, obviously to match the frame, and we have got a very nice upgrade that's going to go in these. But before we do that, we've got to clean the inside of the fork. It's something I wish I did at the start, but I didn't. Best thing to do is get your forks blasted and wash them. I didn't wash them, sent them to paint, and you end up with your lowers covered in grit, sand, paint, grease, and all sorts. So it's really, really important you spend the time to get them cleaned out. Because if you don't, it is going to mess up your suspension system, you're going to get grinding, and you're going to destroy it and wear out those seals way faster than you want. And you may be looking, going, they don't look stock, and they are very much not stock. I will cover some details on them later in the video. But back to the forks, we've got the freshly polished crown, top cap, yoke, whatever you want to call it. We've got that. We've got some new Honda bearings, as the old ones literally collapsed as I took them out. So we're going to get the grease out, grease up these bearings, and get ready to slide these forks up into the frame. So a load of grease on the top as well, and we're going to pack them out, get those bearings in the top, and then it makes it nice and easy to slide the forks up without the lowers, because it's much easier, and then get our locking headset cap on to hold them in place. Moving through this front end, we have got some fresh reflectors, a nice touch to go back to the original look, and we've also got the original horn, which I have refreshed. It's not perfect, but we've cleaned up the housing, we've zinc plated the parts that need it, and just given it a good clean. I was tempted to paint the black part again, but taking the horn apart, it made most sense to just freshen it up like this. And you're left with a very cool front end. It's not 100% with that horn, but I'd rather have the original horn and it look like this than get rid of that very cool part. And the beauty of these upgraded forks, they are super easy to install. They are one whole piece. It's not broken up into multiple sections, so it's literally a case of lining up your top caps and sliding the fork up into the upper and then threading it on just like you do with the standard part. That's simple, and you literally complete the forks in a matter of minutes just by doing that. Right guys, let's take a minute talking about these forks, because they're actually quite a big upgrade from stock and are probably one of the things that's going to make the biggest difference when riding this bike. So in your traditional fork, you literally have a pogo spring style setup. On these first bikes, they were very, very basic. So it's essentially a big spring in here that you can press in with no dampening of any sort. So it will rebound at its own rate, and it is very pogo-y, hence the name, a pogo style fork. What we've done is upgraded to a all-in-one damper spring stanchion setup. So as you saw, these lowers slide up and they've got an oil dampener on the top with the spring, and essentially that gives it the performance of the later models in the package of the smaller original style fork. Big thing for me was making sure it looks OEM, so going for an upgrade like this is spot on. We got the parts from Trail Body over in the States. It was a bit of an ordeal getting them here. They didn't do shipping, but I managed to arrange something off my own back to get them here, so we were lucky enough to get a set of those. In Europe, you're looking at probably £600 for a set of these lowers. I think it's about £200 with shipping to get these in the States. So way, way better in terms of cost, and I'll find out about the performance. But that's a little insight into this upgrade, and yeah, looking forward to seeing how it performs. And with the fork out the way and complete, I want to quickly get these handlebar brackets built up, or these mounts should I say. So we've refreshed the standard old plastic ones for the new ones just because they're worn out. You can see that dull plastic, and for the price it's a no-brainer. From there we take the original Speedo, which has got a new seal around it as they perish and fall apart, and we press that into our freshly painted headlight housing. This headlight housing was a new one because the old one was just destroyed, but we get that together and that allows us to bring it to the front end and slide it into the fork or between the forks. What you've got to do is pass the harness through into the headlight bowl, and that's essentially where all of your interconnections are going to happen for the harness on the bike. And with your wires you also have the Speedo cable, so I've routed that up into the headlight bowl and got that screwed into the Speedo, as it's a good job to get done before you have all of the other wires coming into that area. Just makes it a load easier. And we've also pulled out the handlebars because I thought let's just get these on out the way, and it allows us to route cables up and clip the things when we come to that point. With the goal to get wheels on this bike, I've moved to the rear end and we've built up that swing arm. We've got a small mechanism here that holds the brake drum to stop it from rotating as a sort of stability bracket, and we are greasing up the swing arm bolt so we can get this onto the bike and get some rear suspension on it. So we slide that into place and you knock the bolt through. This bike has done very low miles, everything is very tight. I didn't change the swing arm bushing because it wasn't worth it and it's a pig of a job. So we get that bolt through, nut on the other side. There's no lock nuts, there's no Loctite, but you just tighten that side up and get that really nice and firm, and then you're ready to get your shocks on. We have also upgraded the rear shocks. The original ones are very, very difficult to get, near impossible, and I wanted to keep the OEM look, so we've got the Kataka shock and we have modified the top cap to slide over. So we've opened up that ID and we've made it so they slide right over, so they look exactly OEM but will perform way better, a bit stiffer and just a bit more rigid. So they clip or push into place, and then you've got some washers and some dome nuts to hold them in place. And up next is a very exciting part, one of my favourites, and that is getting the decals onto the frame, because it is amazing how quickly you transform a bike when it's got some of the original decals. So we start by trimming up the graphics kit, so I've got a nice clean line that matches the angle that I want for the sticker, and we peel back this sticker and slowly lay it on, really taking our time to make sure that there's no bubbles on it and it follows the shape of the frame. All I can suggest is just take your time, get it marked out first and peel it off slowly. It's very easy just to rip it and then you pull the sticker with it. But you can see here, it looks brilliant and literally transforms the look of the bike. And mid decal applying, we have a visitor, so I thought I'd stick him on camera so he can be part of the video. So a little visit, and then we go back to the decals and get the side Trail 70 stickers on. These are much easier and literally have a sort of indent in the frame so you know where it goes. And now time for the good stuff. Those parts we worked on in the first video, those lovely wheels, can now go onto the bike. So we're all prepped. It's literally a case of pushing the wheel into place, a spacer, and then tightening the front bolt down, and we have a spinning wheel. And from there we can add on our brake adjuster, our speedo cable, we've got some bolts to tighten up, and that just tidies up that front end and pretty much brings it all together. And that, guys, is going to bring us to the end of today's video. We have made some good progress on the bike. As you can see, it's really coming together. We've got front forks, we've got rear shocks, we've even got a front wheel and a front brake set up. An issue we do have, the stand I originally built here to do the Z50. A mistake on my side, it's not tall enough to allow us to put that rear wheel in. So it's a bit of an issue because I wanted to have wheels on the bike before it went on the ground. So we're going to have to somehow, in the next episode, get this bike off, get a rear wheel on, and then have it on a stand and work on it at floor height. We've got plenty more to come, we've got plenty more parts, and we're going to really get to work and finish this bike off. I'm desperate to get the engine running and have this thing sitting there ready to ride. So that will be in the next episode, so please do stay tuned, subscribe if you like the content because there will be more on this bike. Until then, take it easy and I'll catch you in the next video.